Welcome to Ayala Museum. This event was planned with security and safety of all guests as top of mind. In case of an emergency and we need to evacuate, located around the building are exit doors. The green broken lines will lead you to emergency exits, and our security personnel shall assist you towards the evacuation area. Priority will be given to persons with disability, pregnant women, elderly, and children. Please evacuate in an orderly manner, remain calm, and refrain from running and pushing. The security team of Ayala Museum will ensure that all guests are safe and complete at the designated evacuation area. For any medical-related concerns, please approach any of our security personnel. We have a nurse on standby ready to assist you. Thank you.
Then someone like me is going to end your whole career. You think that 80% of our workforce will just go out and become lifelong learners because it's in their best interest. You are in for disaster. Using machine learning to address bias and diversity in the world. That's me, that's my life. People like me are building new AIs on the order of every 2 years. I mean, coming up with new, really conceptually different, disruptive AIs. It takes me 20 years to build a person. That is not math that is in the favor of social stability if we are not actively dealing with the problem.
I think I was so fearful of, AI, this, AI, that.
There's so much uncertainty in terms of what you're building.
Because the only way to find the right solution is to really think about it.
My realization is there's no problem that is unsolvable.
There's order in non-linear thinking.
Openness to learn is actually dependent on your openness to listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will start in 5 minutes. We will start in 5 minutes.
Welcome to Ayala Museum. This event was planned with security and safety of all guests as top of mind. In case of an emergency and we need to evacuate, located around the building are exit doors. The green broken lines will lead you to emergency exits, and our security personnel shall assist you towards the evacuation area. Priority will be given to persons with disability, pregnant women, elderly, and children. Please evacuate in an orderly manner, remain calm, and refrain from running and pushing. The security team of Ayala Museum will ensure that all guests are safe and complete at the designated evacuation area. For any medical-related concerns, please approach any of our security personnel. We have a nurse on standby ready to assist you. Thank you.
Then someone like me is going to end your whole career. You think that 80% of our workforce will just go out and become lifelong learners because it's in their best interest. You are in for disaster. Using machine learning to address bias and diversity in the world. That's me, that's my life. People like me are building new AIs on the order of every 2 years. I mean, coming up with new, really conceptually different, disruptive AIs. It takes me 20 years to build a person. That is not math that is in the favor of social stability if we are not actively dealing with the problem.
I think I was so fearful of, I don't know, AI, this AI, that.
There's so much uncertainty in terms of what you're building.
Because the only way to find the right solution is to really think about it.
My realization is there's no problem that is unsolvable.
There's order in non-linear thinking.
Openness to learn is actually dependent on your openness to listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will begin in 2 minutes. May we request everyone to take their seats. If you don't have seats, more seats will be taken out for you. Thank you.
Then someone like me is going to end your whole career. You think that 80% of our workforce will just go out and become lifelong learners because it's in their best interest. You are in for disaster. Using machine learning to address bias and diversity in the world. That's me, that's my life. People like me are building new AIs on the order of every 2 years. I mean, coming up with new, really conceptually different, disruptive AIs. It takes me 20 years to build a person. That is not math that is in the favor of social stability if we are not actively dealing with the problem.
I think I was so fearful of, I don't know, AI, this AI, that.
There's so much uncertainty in terms of what you're building.
Because the only way to find the right solution is to really think about it.
My realization is there's no problem that is unsolvable.
There's order in non-linear thinking.
Openness to learn is actually dependent on your openness to listen.
Hello. Good morning. Good morning, Ayala Museum. Welcome to the island. Welcome to Hyper Island. Okay. Good morning, Singapore. How are you guys there in Singapore? Okay, Singapore still settling. And while they're settling, let us settle down. Hello, Singapore. Hello? Yes. Hello, Singapore. Modern problems, right?
Don't forget to unmute.
There. Hello,
you can hear us
Singapore.
now, I'm sure. Yes. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Singapore.
Good morning. Good morning to the Philippines and to all the others who are watching in from around the world.
Yes, and good morning and good evening to everyone watching us today, not just here in Asia, but around the world. So I'm TQ. I'm the marketing manager of Hyper Island Asia Pacific. And with me,
And I'm Yeng Wai. I'm the Master's Program Director of Hyper Island Asia Pacific as well. And how's everyone in the Philippines, TQ? How's the vibe there?
very good, Yang Wai. We have a full house and we're very excited, we're very pumped. And we're just very excited and we've had lots of good conversation. How about you there in Singapore? How are you guys there?
I think we can tell by just how many people are going to wave their hands. Okay, so Singapore, wave your hands. Yeah, woo! All right, there we go. Yeah, the energy is really good. So much conversations going on, people meeting new people, and also we've got alumni in the house, so we're very happy for that. Yeah, I think we are just getting ready to get this show on the road.
Okay, that's right. And then it's not only a regional event what we're having, it's really a global event, right, Yang Wai?
That's right. Actually, I think that's the other thing, right? We recognize that the topic that we have today is not just a localized issue or a regional issue, but it's really an issue that is hitting the whole world. This whole issue of how do we develop people, especially in the age of AI. So we're really looking forward to hearing more from both Dr. Ming and also our panelists here in Singapore and the panelists in the Philippines. And those of you watching on the YouTube live stream, right, welcome to you as well. But I think to start today's session, I think let's formally open this session with our Managing Director, Peachy Parking. She's going to address us with some opening remarks. So Peachy, over to you.
Okay. Magandang umaga, Pilipinas. And good morning, Singapore. In our increasingly complex world, certainty is extremely hard to come by. As the saying goes, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Therefore, it's such a gift to have episodes in life when you have utmost clarity and know in your mind, heart, and gut it is the right thing to do. For me, it was to give up pursuing a PhD in New Zealand and move to Singapore to join a Swedish postgraduate creative, business, and tech school called Hyper Island. Hyper Island was founded 27 years ago in Karlskrona, Sweden, and 12 years ago landed on a red dot in Asia at the behest of the Singapore Economic Development Board. This year, it has come to the Philippines. Hyper Island was a response to a world in constant flux. We have seen and lived through disruptions that played out in every aspect of our lives: politics, economics, social, environmental, even our legal and education systems. Technocentric seismic shifts that changed the way we work, live, and possibly even love. What hasn't changed much is, to this day, Hyper Island still sits at the intersection of business, creativity, and technology. We continue to facilitate transformative learning experiences and encourage a transdisciplinary appreciation of the world and see through multiple lenses to view our emerging challenges. Our learners are self-determined as they are self-driven. Now, the other time I was compelled to do what I believed with every fiber of my being was right was when I wrote a random fan mail to someone I admire deeply. Long story short, she's the reason we are all here this morning. Her words, 5 of them to be exact, inspired a mission at Hyper Island, and that is to build people for the unknown. So I'm deeply honored and infinitely thrilled to have with us Dr. Vivienne Ming today. I'm sure she will provoke you as she will inspire you. And this I say with absolute certainty. Our keynote speaker is an exceptional thought leader, neuroscientist, and entrepreneur, renowned for her pioneering work at the intersection of artificial intelligence and human potential. Her impactful insights and innovative approach redefine the future of work and education, advocating for the augmentation of human capabilities with technology. With a passion for creating positive societal change, she continues to inspire and empower individuals and organizations through her groundbreaking research, thought-provoking talks, and initiatives aimed at building more inclusive and future-ready society. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and friends who have become family, please welcome Dr. Vivienne Ming, live from New York. I've always wanted to say that, live from New York. Good evening, Dr. Ming.
It's not Saturday night.
Yes, but almost Saturday night.
Lovely to be with you.
Yes. So Dr. Ming, there's a lot of conversation around AI and how we should be developing people. And as I said, the mission we undertook, being inspired by your words, is to build people for the unknown. So today, please tell us and share with us your perspectives on how might we build people for the unknown.
Gosh, it is such a huge question, to be honest. I don't know if you appreciate it, but it comes in a variety of forms. The first time I think I was asked this question, although the person clearly didn't know that they were asking it, was maybe 15 years ago at the Department of Education here in the United States in Washington, D.C., but the way they phrased it was, how do we robot-proof our kids? And the reason they were asking is because everyone's worried that artificial intelligence is going to consume our jobs, that it's going to start at the low end of the skills ladder and slowly work its way up, eating away at livelihoods and maybe even social stability. I'd be happy to give a talk about the implications of all of that, whether those fears are likely to come true. But what I wanted to talk about today, less so than the economic implications of artificial intelligence from a global labor market perspective, is something much more human, much more grounded in our day-to-day lives. And in fact, in answering the question, how do we build people for the unknown? I'm going to start with a question of my own. I know I'm not going to be able to actually see the audience here, and don't screw with the cameras. We put a lot of effort into getting this set up correctly. But let me just ask a question that sounds like it has nothing to do with artificial intelligence or the future of work, or maybe even the unknown. And that question is, are you happy? And actually, let me make it a little bit more nuanced. If you weren't happy, you know what you would do to change that. And I'm willing to bet many of you in the audience have completely figured out life, and you have everything taken care of, and you lead a happy life. I, at least in the second half of mine, have a pretty spectacularly wonderful life. Maybe sometimes a little wonderfully overfull. We probably all feel a little overextended. But at the same time, given the two audiences in Singapore and Manila, given others joining us around the world, the chances are that some of us on this video connection are struggling right now. And here's what's interesting about this question to me. Not simply, I could talk about projects I'm working on to hopefully treat depression or to work through Alzheimer's and change the story of who's happy and who isn't. But actually, the very idea of happiness speaks to the unknown. And the way I'm going to explain this is by saying a curious relationship, which is happiness doesn't correlate with intelligence. And that seems a little strange. Happiness, surely being smart, should help us figure out how to be happy. And yet we can measure it in old, discarded ways like IQ tests. We can look at more modern measures like G. We can look at low-level brain-based phenomenon like working memory. And yet again and again, what we find is that traditional measures of intelligence don't predict happiness. And the reason this is so important to the questions of the unknown and of artificial intelligence is it's because we're measuring intelligence wrong. Or we're measuring it in a very limited way. What we are measuring is our ability to answer well-posed questions. What we're asking of people when we give them some form of an IQ test is, here's a well-defined problem that has an unambiguously correct answer. In fact, arguably, almost all of our education systems around the world are based on that basic idea of well-posed questions. What is 2 plus 2? Given the structure of this polynomial, how would you factorize it into another form? What was the point of the Treaty of Versailles? All of these have right and wrong answers, at least the way we treat them in traditional education, and in some ways in job interviews, and certainly on IQ tests. Sometimes the questions on IQ tests can be very complicated. We test people with things like Raven's progressive matrices, which can get more and more involved. Or I could ask you well-posed, but extremely esoteric questions, like what is the role of the locus ceruleus and where would you find one? By the way, it's in your head. We all have it. And it's slightly blue in stain, which is why it's called the blue spot, locus ceruleus. But it turns out happiness is not a well-posed question. And even less well-posed is, how does one find happiness if you don't have it? There's no right answer. In fact, these are questions which are fundamentally driven by context, individual differences. They're driven in the moment. Maybe it has better and worse answers, but our ability to find happiness is our ability to solve an ill-posed question. What does any of this have to do with artificial intelligence and work? Well, we live in a world where for some time now, something other than humanity has been better at answering well-posed questions than we are. For decades, you've been able to go to Google and answer questions that you never would have been able to answer before. But fair enough, Google just returns a website. You still have to look it up. But of course, what we all understand is now we live in the world of GPT. On some basic level, whether you use Google's Bard or OpenAI's GPT or Anthropic's Claude or some others that are being released as we speak, you have certain degree of all of the world's knowledge in your pocket for free. That is an interesting world to live in. It's one that has never existed before. We know the answers to all of the well-posed questions. I admit we know those answers better if they're posed in English, and that is a real limitation that I know is being worked on extensively, not the least of which is because Baidu is building one of its own LLMs, large language models. But we live in a world where intelligence is a commodity, at least the intelligence associated with well-posed questions. But here's the thing. Our ability to explore the unknown is our ability to solve ill-posed questions. And that's problematic. It's problematic because when we look at education around the world, we look at a system that was developed with its roots starting 200 some odd years ago, at least when we think of global public education, and its slow spread within a certain small number of countries and then truly globally. And today, many kids expect to go to school and they're expected to answer well-posed questions and demonstrate their knowledge of facts, because that knowledge would secure you a job. That knowledge, not simply accumulated in elementary schools and secondary schools, but taken at university to guarantee you a career for the rest of your life. Now I get it for free in my phone. But what I don't get from any LLM, and I personally don't expect us to get anytime soon, is understanding. If you really want to understand LLMs, and I don't mean algorithmically, I can say for my own part, if you think that they're reasoning machines, you are mistaken. They are the world's most complicated autocomplete. What's amazing is how much that does, how powerful an autocomplete just predicts the next word in a sentence, how powerful that can be with the most massive data centers, computing and training on all of the world's, at least English language corpus, and even a large swath of many, many other languages. It is now a technology which, in terms of the United States, can pass every US bar exam, the test to practice law. It can pass the medical licensing board exams to become doctors in every state, the graduate record exam program to be able to go to graduate school and get PhDs or many other experiences. It now regularly outperforms all but the most elite human performers. LLMs know everything, but they understand nothing. And there is something terrifying in that. Something terrifying knowing that our children will grow up in a world where just getting a degree, being able to read a contract or look at an X-ray and understand what's cancer and what isn't, won't secure you a job. Not that alone. But there's still the unknown. And what I love about this whole story, as scary as it can sound and as amazing it may be that we live in a world with a technology like this, despite my protestations that it's not nearly as revolutionary as people would sometimes make it out to be, it is still amazing and fundamentally a transformational tool. But it is a tool that only knows what has come before. It is a tool fundamentally about answering well-posed questions. It's a tool about the routine. And yes, we have built a global economy on millions, maybe billions of workers doing routine labor. And the dark side of my presentation is that it's not that those jobs disappear. We haven't quite built AIs that can just tap you on the shoulder and say you're fired. But what we have built are tools that deprofessionalize. Tools that take even highly trained but routine labor and shift the burden down the talent scale, which in some ways could actually be a boon for many. People that were never afforded the opportunity to practice medicine or law or write code now might find themselves with these tools better able to do so. But it's still fundamentally the same global economy, the same numbers of people doing this work. So even though their productivity might rise, I don't actually expect their salaries to rise. And in fact, that's the trend of the last 30 years. Routine labor, including some of the most elite routine labor, has begun to be progressively deprofessionalized, and less of the global economy is going to what we would call the labor share. So that's scary. But that's only one side of the equation. Modern AI's ability to comprehensively transform the routine economy. But as I said, that routine economy is bounded. It is what we know, and what we know is finite. What I think is amazing is what that leaves for humanity is the unknown. And the unknown is infinite. Yes, we've built our whole economy around the vast majority of people being a part of that routine economy, answering well-posed questions, pulling levers, even if sometimes complex cognitive levers. But now we have not just the opportunity, but frankly, the imperative to leave that behind, to jettison this idea that a human being is a list of hard skills on a resume with an associated university. Instead, let me propose the human beings in the future I want my children to grow up in. In fact, a future which starts today, a future which I've had the chance to be a part of for 25 years now, is a future in which our jobs are about exploring the unknown. Now, having said all of that, and admittedly not getting into technical details about what generative AI and large language models are, which we have time for questions, and I would be happy to talk about it. What I want to emphasize is, admittedly, as someone who has spent 25 years building machine learning models in science, in entrepreneurship, and with a real passion in philanthropy, I will acknowledge that what has interested me from the start isn't machines, it's people. For me, artificial intelligence was always just a tool. And because I'm always right about everything, I'm here to tell you that is how you should view it as well. It may be the world's most sophisticated tool. It may be the most complex hammer humanity has ever developed, but it's still just a tool. It is a paintbrush. And on its own, this may seem ironic given that generative AI can in fact make pictures by itself, but it doesn't. Remember, it makes pictures because we give it a prompt. Large language models can produce whole essays that can pass with flying colors sophisticated tests of knowledge and do it with stellar punctuation, which I will be frank, even my graduate students are completely incompetent in actually supplying to me. But the answers it gives are fundamentally boring because it gives the same answer to the same prompt if I do it or if you do it. Strangely enough, some of them, like Claude, will change slightly over time, but that's a technical issue. It's not really that it's engaging in some sort of creativity or changing its mind. It's just changing its state. What's interesting to me is what we put into it is what we get back. So I'm going to share one more story before I specifically talk about how we build people for the unknown. And this story is a bit of research done at MIT, jointly with a Boston Consulting Group. But interestingly, what they found isn't fundamentally different than any others. OpenAI did their own research showing that when programmers used their GPT-powered coding tool, they boosted their productivity by as much as 40%. When call center workers used a large language model tool to support their work, they answered their calls faster and with greater satisfaction to their customers. When university-educated writers used these tools, they were able to boost their productivity significantly. And yes, as MIT analyzed with BCG, where real working consultants were given a task to solve, a spreadsheet of data analyzed and interviews to review, they could ask GPT to analyze, to integrate the interviews, produce a report, and finally generate a set of slides. And as you can imagine, of course, those consultants were faster and more accurate when they used the AI to support them. The analyses were better and quicker. The reports obviously were much faster. And the slides, not having to build your own slides and put in your own artwork and clip art and all the rest of it, that's amazing. But then a funny thing happened, a thing that wasn't found in the others, because they only looked at routine work. And however complicated it may sound for a consultant to analyze some spreadsheet data and generate a report, still fundamentally routine. On some level, a different analyst with the same data would come to the same answers, at least ideally. But what they added in for this analysis is they asked those consultants to then tell their hypothetical clients what they should do about the results of the analysis. And unbeknownst to these highly educated, highly motivated BCG consultants, they had already arranged the data such that GPT would give the wrong answer. That the notes that were in the details, in the interviews, and in the spreadsheet data would, on its surface, lead you to the wrong conclusions if you weren't paying attention. You weren't thinking with nuance about the problem. And unsurprisingly to me, it went from the AIs making the consultants more productive and faster. When you asked them to do creative labor, they were worse than the people that weren't using an AI at all. Now, I've been building AIs for 25 years. So of course, I am not saying we shouldn't make use of this amazing tool. But what I'm arguing is, in the grand scheme, it is the craftsman using the tools, not the tools themselves, that allow us to solve the truly challenging, ill-posed questions of the world. Craftsmen without their tools is hobbled. I truly could not do what I do, or at least as fast as I can do it. I founded 12 companies. I've invented life-saving technologies. My most recent company combines artificial intelligence and epigenetics. We have the first test ever, the first biological test for postpartum depression. And it's predictive. We can give this test before a woman has ever given birth. And we actually think we can do it before she's ever even become pregnant. To know ahead of time that you will need extra support and medical treatment, and to also know it's not something that's just in your head. We can see the epigenetic biomarker of it long before it happens. I believe in the power of these tools to do good in the world, but I know we are the ones doing good. We are the ones exploring the unknown and solving these seemingly unsolvable problems. I will also note one last detail on all of those research reports about people using large language models in their work. Almost everyone that's received a big boost to their productivity was a relatively low-skilled, inexperienced worker. And I'll note one other thing from a long history of research of artificial intelligence in education. When students are given an AI that gives them the right answer, whether it gives it to them upfront or eventually after they work hard for it, students don't learn anything. They're better when they use the AI tutors, but when you test them again at the end, they have learned nothing. Now think of a society of all of those junior employees, all the deprofessionalized workforce working so incredibly hard to do this great job with this amazing new tool, and understand we might be condemning ourselves, never learning, to being the same person 10 years into our job as we were the day we walked in, to not growing, not exploring, because our amazing AI tools are doing all of the work for us. And because we're not exploring, when the world needs us, provide our creative insight, we may not have that capability to supply. Now that worries me. So you asked me the question right up front, how do we build people for the unknown? Well, this has been on my mind for 25 years. Since I was an undergrad, I've wondered about what it takes to build better people. And right now, around the world, we're worried about disinformation and AI deepfakes and the influence of social media on our children. Let's be honest, on ourselves as well. And I'm telling you, although there are tools in the arsenals of AI experts that can help, they are just tools. You want to truly tackle disinformation? You want to prepare for the workforce of the future? You want a better life? You need to be better people. And when I really began thinking about this, when two of my companies were in education and another two were working using AI in hiring and workforce, I had a data set of 122 million people. And I had the chance to build models to look at what predicted who would be successful on the job, who would be able to actually show up and transform their workspace. And what was amazing is, one, we saw the same things in little kids as we did in adult salespeople and software developers. Two, as I just suggested, we saw the same thing in software developers and salespeople. And I will tell you, as I alluded to earlier, It wasn't the list of skills they had on their resume. It wasn't in and of itself the university. They listed their alma mater that gets them all their accolades. Once I knew other things about them, sorts of things we saw that predicted both positive long-term life outcomes, health, wealth, and happiness. Sorts of things we saw were answers to even more basic questions. Are you resilient? Do you understand the perspectives of other people? What kind of numeracy and literacy did you develop when you were a child? What are your self-assessment skills? And can you adapt to the unknown? It turns out there were dozens of different constructs that make us up who we are. Things that you might say are fundamentally about being human, that one, were measurable. And this is one of the things I love about my job. I get to use artificial intelligence to understand people. My first ever program that I built, forgive me, with funding from the CIA, believe it or not, but what I built was a system to analyze people's faces and to tell if they were smiling or not. It could tell the difference between a fake smile and a real smile. Again, it felt so human. And yet it was a series of equations that I'd programmed into a computer and then trained on data about faces. Let's be clear, AI doesn't know if you truly are happy just because you're smiling, but it can tell if you're smiling, frowning, or what have you. And to have done that 25 years ago, and to have that undergraduate lab spin off as a startup and eventually get bought by Apple. So if any of you there in the audience have an iPhone, that's my undergraduate lab. If you've ever done an Animoji, we talked about doing that 25 years ago. When you have the budget of Apple, you can kind of do these things for real, not just lab experiments. But this got me hooked. I could use artificial intelligence to understand natural intelligence. And what I truly wanted to build was augmented intelligence. How do we bring the best of what computers can do together with the best of what people can do? And this actually is a challenge. I still teach one class a year at UC Berkeley. And in this class, I challenge, it's an engineering entrepreneurship course. And I challenge the students in the class to pick their favorite technology that they currently use and ask themselves two questions. Am I better when I'm using it? And am I better than where I started when I turn it off again? A great many technologies, the way they get used in the world, they don't make us better. Not even when they're working as advertised. But many of them, and my go-to example is Google Maps, undeniably make us better when we're using it. But my prediction 15 years ago was the use of Google Maps would causally increase the rate of early onset dementia in the world. And about 5 years ago, the experimental results came in and I was right. By allowing AIs to navigate the world for us, we are stealing from ourselves one of the richest sources of, you might call it, cognitive exercise that we have in our life, our need to navigate through space. And because we don't have to do it anymore, we don't have to think about it, we are actually harming ourselves. When I talk about how to build someone for the unknown, I'm not simply saying people need to be magically born resilient. I am saying we actually know how to measure resilience using artificial intelligence, but through other means as well, that those measurements predict long-term life outcomes and in fact are causally related to them. All-cause mortality, insulin sensitivity, central body mass, lifetime wealth, lifetime income, social network size, subjective well-being, psychologists talk for happiness, life meaningfulness, everything you'd want to be true about you at age 65. There's more people, it's true of more people rich in these qualities. We call them meta-learning, the collection of them, resilience, a sense of purpose, analogical reasoning, self-assessment. We call them meta-learning because they're our ability to learn about learning, our ability to change and grow in the face of the unknown. And here's the last quality those meta-learning attributes have. They are changeable. You may have heard stories that tell you you're either resilient or you're not. You're a risk taker or you're not. There's nothing you can do. I will admit, as an adult, as someone who is, oh my God, 52, it truly can become a little more challenging to change some of these deep qualities about ourselves, particularly cognitive ones like numeracy and literacy. But it is none of them can't be changed. And just to give you one concrete example before I take a pause and we answer some questions, and I hope there are many of them. And if you want to nerd out and ask me about equations or algorithms, let's do that too. But one of my favorite to look at is one I've mentioned several times already, which is resilience. What makes resilience so much different than teaching a student that 2 + 2 = 4, or how to factorize a polynomial, or teaching them facts about history, is it's not a routine piece of knowledge. Resilience is built through lived experience. Let me be blunt. Although we are all different, and our genetics and our life history make us a heterogeneous population in the world, wherever you start from, one, you could become more resilient, but two, the only way to become resilient is to experience failure. The way we do it in some of the tools I've built in education over the years is to create circumstances in which students can fail, but in which there's an infrastructure to catch them and help them find success out the other side. In fact, the very simple definition I often use for resilience is how likely are you to eventually find success after experiencing a failure? Well, this isn't a quality or an educational experience that happens overnight. It's something that's about growth. It is a lived experience. When we look at emotional intelligence and social skills, creativity-related skills, all of these can be changed throughout a life. You can learn how better to take people's perspectives. You can find a sense of purpose in your life, whether spiritual or very grounded and human. You can find these qualities and build them in yourself, but it's effortful. And maybe this is the most important thing I can share to you. And I'll try to close with this. I've been discussing with my wife, who we were both faculty at Cal, but nowadays she just started a new position at the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Learning. We talk every day about how can we use new tools and artificial intelligence to understand students and transform education. One thing that I've insisted on is that the purpose of formal education, and even informal at home, is not to make education easy. The hard thing about learning is learning. It should be hard. We have to learn how to go deep. And extensive recent research, including some of my own, shows interventions simply making learners comfortable with the idea of effort by extending the amount of effort they have to put in over time to get the same output, making them comfortable, developing their patience, their willingness who invest longer and longer in time for certain outcome is transformative of their entire education experience. The purpose of formal education is not to make learning easy. The hard thing about learning is learning. Make all the other stuff easy. Make it easy to get to school. Make it safe to be in school, but don't make the learning easy. Instead, the purpose of formal education is to create in your students the belief that their hard work will pay off. Once you create that, you can get them to do anything. How would you build that in yourself? How can you find that belief? And my one recommendation, interesting enough, builds off of my research on courage, is to recognize, just as with resilience and perspective taking and all these other constructs we've looked at, 50-ish in all, courage isn't just something you're born with. Courage isn't something you are. Courage is practice. And if you don't practice courage when it's easy, you will not be ready to make courageous decisions when it's hard. And let me tell you, the world needs you to explore the unknown and speak the truth of what you find there. It desperately needs it, because if you can't do that, someone like me is building an AI. Take your hard-run career away from you. Because if what you're doing is simply carrying out the orders that someone else told you about a process that's been in place for 20 years, then if it's not automated, it is certainly getting deprofessionalized. I need you to explore the unknown. And for you to truly be good at that, you need to slowly begin to develop the courage, the resilience, the perspective taking. All of these attributes that we have seen are fundamentally, causally related to not just the exploration, but to the benefits that come from it. Because that's the economy I want for the future. I want you to be a part of the creative economy. I want every child to be a part of the creative economy. And I'm not delusional. We don't live in a world where tomorrow I'm somehow going to be a self-appointed do-gooder pulling every single kid in every favela and shanty in the world out of that experience and into the kind of life I've had the chance to lead. But I'm telling you that it is in our own interest to pull as many of those around us along into this transformed world, because there is a growing chasm between the routine and the creative economy. And it will soon become very hard to cross that chasm. We need to start pulling as many of our fellows along with us as possible, and understanding that, yes, everyone should know how to factorize a polynomial, and everyone should know that 2 + 2 = 4. But even more so, we need a generation of creative, adaptive problem explorers, a generation that's resilient, a generation of craftsmen that can do amazing things with amazing tools. So I'm going to throw it out to questions and simply leave it here. I've occasionally add up how many data points I've analyzed in my career. It currently stands just over 10 trillion. 10 trillion data points. Admittedly, if I went and worked for OpenAI, I could actually double that number overnight. But hey, I am proud that all by myself, I've analyzed 10 trillion data points. And here's the amazing story they tell. The simple, concise statement. If you want an amazing life, you have to give it to someone else. So with that, I think it is about time to throw it back perhaps to Peachy and to hopefully answer some questions. And again, maybe get into some more specifics about what people want to understand about artificial intelligence, the neuroscience behind some of these constructs I've talked about today, and maybe even how to get started making these changes.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Ming.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, very. And thank you for that very thought-provoking. And at the same time, I think it's a talk that also speaks of hope and of what could be and what the challenges ahead of us. So thank you for that. I think they can hear me. You can hear me okay, PG? Yeah? All right. Yeah, and I think, look, I mean, I've got so many questions arising from the talk, and I'm sure you do as well. But we know we have limited time. So what we had done is that actually Dr. Ming runs regular AMA sessions. You can look for her on LinkedIn. You can sign up for her AMA. She takes questions. And I think for us, it'll be middle of the night in Asia. But I think she's hopefully given you enough inspiration. I want to do that. But so what we did is that earlier this week, we asked questions. We asked the participants for questions. And so we've collected some. And I think that's how we're going to proceed. Is that right, PG?
That's perfectly fine.
Okay, so I'm going to kick off. I think we had a question that came in from one of our participants, and I'm going to just read this out, okay? Dr. Ming, it's a bit of a long one, but I'm just going to read it out anyway.
It's okay.
Yep. So here's what this person asked. She said, Ishiguro's Clara and the Sons is a book. It explores the very intimate and personal shapes that AI can adopt in the near hypothetical future. An important aspect of the narrative is a social pressure that ensures the adoption of cognitive enhancement features through AI to drive human performance. So it's not far-fetched, this person says, that similar to the story, there'll be a social pressure to adopt AI, even if you're not willing to, or even if you're unable to. So some may feel excluded from these social and potentially economic contexts. So a few questions for you, which is, how can we avoid the reckless adoption of technology and AI that may have negative implications on society? I mean, how do we separate, what is good from what is bad, and what can be done to ensure that this wave of change does not leave people behind?
Absolutely. It's worth noting that when I interviewed to go to grad school and people asked me what I wanted to research, I said cyborgs, with exactly that sort of manic grin that actually caused the other prospective students to scoot away from me for fear that my crazy would rub off. And in fact, I wrote an essay several years ago titled, "I'm turning my son into a cyborg. How will yours ever keep up?" And I'll note one idea from that essay, and which I hope you understand was an ironic title, and yet still has a lot of truth. And the question has a lot of truth. In a world in which privileged families can make use of AI technology to maximize test scores, and not just AI technology. I work in the space, I have two companies doing neurotechnologies, one of which uses neuromodulation to treat Alzheimer's and aid in stroke recovery, except we actually happen to know for a fact that it also improves cognitive performance in neurotypical individuals. So if you're going in for the standardized exams in your country and you see someone with some fancy set of electrodes on their head, you might have real reason to be worried that they have an unfair advantage. And I'm willing to bet nobody's written laws saying that that can't happen yet. Though I would argue that maybe we should start thinking about this not simply as Nobel Prize winning science fiction, and I've had the chance to enjoy or lament or everything in between all of Ishiguro's books, but I'm a huge sci-fi nerd myself. And in fact, I will freely admit I'm writing a screenplay because I live in California and we're all legally required to dream about being in Hollywood in California. And my screenplay addresses some near science fictional issues relating to brains. So there's that one issue about use. But there's another thing I want to bring up. Bear with me, it will only take a moment to set up the story. There's been a lot of research about the effects of social media, particularly on teens and adolescents, and a lot of controversy. I will freely admit my opinion is that controversy is ginned up. It's controversy like controversy about lead paint or climate change. I read a lot of research on this, and one of the best papers I read involved a natural experiment in Canada where broadband was rolled out in different fashion across different parts of the country, and they looked at the effect of social media use using this natural experiment on both academic and mental health outcomes of adolescents. And in particular, in adolescent girls, the effects were devastating. They were genuinely bad. They were negative. The one small sliver of the kinds of things that the asker of this question is getting at, and then another one might be what I brought up with Google Maps, a truly useful technology. Whereas I have very different feelings about social media. Google Maps is genuinely useful, but if both of them are doing at least some degree of harm, and it's hard to measure, maybe for decades, how are we confident? Here's what makes me hopeful, and why I believe in the idea, as offhand as it may sound in a 30-minute talk, of building better people. Because not every adolescent girl was harmed by social media in that study. There, in fact, were two populations. Yes, they were minorities of the total population looked at, but there were two populations. One just wasn't on social media at all, of their own choice. Sometimes we treat technologies like they are inevitable, a force of nature. Every teenager will be on social media. Every job will be transformed by AI. And I think there are positive aspects of AI's influence on work, which I would love to see in many jobs. I grew up in the world that John Steinbeck wrote about, The Grapes of Wrath, and In Dubious Battle, human beings bent over in fields 16 hours a day. There really is something positive, the idea that that doesn't have to be human existence anymore, though it still leaves us with the question of, but agriculture is the single largest employer in the entire world. What do we do with all of these people? I made my pitch. Let's be crazy enough to think that they have more to the world to offer than being bent over in a field. But having said all of that, what truly amazes me is a slightly smaller population of young women in Canada who are on social media just as much as their peers, but they show none of the negative effects. What is different about them? I'm going to put it this way. They go deep. And in a behavior you don't see in any of these other young women. They're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they're in wherever it is. They're sure as hell not on LinkedIn, but whatever, you get my point. They're on social media, they're looking at this, but unlike all of the other young women, they stop and they look and they think, why did I like this picture? Why I want to swipe away from this video because I'm not enjoying it. But instead, they take a moment and think, what is not engaging with me about this video? They go deep. And what's amazing is I can look at a separate study looking at senior citizens, and we see almost an exact parallel there. When your mobility drops off as you age, it becomes a very strong negative predictor of near future health outcomes. 4 and 5 year health outcomes begin to really drop when mobility becomes restricted. But in this research, the authors looked at two equally restricted mobility populations, but figuratively, they weren't restricted. They were both online. One population passively streamed videos. The other population explored the internet. And I bet you can already guess what I'm going to say. The population that explored, even though they weren't literally doing it with their own legs, were substantially more likely to be alive 5 years later. And their cognitive abilities were better. There's a direct parallel between those young women that were engaging, going deep with social media, and these senior citizens going deep with their explorations of the internet. They are both taking the time to put in the effort think about what they're doing. And I kind of alluded to it during my talk. You don't need AIs making deep fakes to trick the world. The truth is, we want to be tricked. We want the internet to tell us the things we wish were true, the things that would make us feel good, the things that would make us feel like my side is fundamentally right in this fight. And we don't want to hear when we're wrong. And amazing enough, the internet does an amazing job of filling that hole. And here we have an example of young girls, 11-year-old girls, who are saying, maybe I'm not right. Maybe I need to think about how I feel when I use social media. And their very existence is proof, to me at least, given all of my research, that this, at least in theory, could be all of us. And it sure as hell should be more of our kids and even ourselves. Let me say this to close my overly long answer to this question. Since I started a couple of ed tech companies, I get a lot of people walking up to me with a very simple question. Dr. Ming, how can I be a better parent? And I offer this entirely unhelpful, yet 100% true answer. Be a better person. The biggest impact you will ever have on your kids, and for that matter, on your employees, on your students, the biggest impact you will ever have is what you role model for them. It is the person they see. All of the little decisions you make along the ways, those are small potatoes by comparison. Who you are, the power of role modeling is truly transformative. And by the way, I will also plug it in terms of building meta-learning skills. One of the main things we do, apart from the somewhat arduous task of, hey, you want to build resilience? Well, give me several months of your life and we're going to work through failure and we're going to come out the other side, all of which is true. If you build a team, let's say of 5 people, and you put 2 highly resilient people on it and you wait a couple of years, everybody on the team is more resilient. Again, role modeling is an amazingly powerful transformative tool.
Just listening to you, I want to ask questions of my own, but I know I'm supposed to be asking the questions of the audience. So I will go to one of your Ask Me Anything sessions again and put my questions there. So for now, one of the questions, but thank you. I mean, coming up the stage earlier, I felt just be a better person. If you want to be happy with your life, give it to someone else. Oh my God, that was my reaction, and people were texting me, I'm crying, on the side. So I don't know if your words are affecting us.
I believe an AI nerd is the one saying this stuff. I love myself a good equation. I love coming up with new algorithms. I find it truly fun. But it's, let me quote Darth Vader, your technological wonders are nothing compared to the power of the Force. It is our human ability to explore the unknown and transform one another. Maybe someday we have AI that is as powerful as that, but for now, I could only wish to build something so amazing.
And thank you for that. One of the questions we received is brings us to the area of unintended consequences. It's one of the things we sort of like make sure is embedded in our learners' heads. And I lost my question. Okay, one moment, please. Okay, so we say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. We always wish we start off with the hope that this technology will make the world a better place or make us even better people. But what is one very specific unintended consequence you would like to avoid, and how in your professional or personal capacity are you mitigating it?
So one of the ones that worries me the most, I already mentioned during my talk, and it is this idea, really a Sam Altman himself the now I think slightly tarnished and notorious CEO of OpenAI, has said, "Oh, amazing! Imagine every kid all over the world has their own personalized GPT tutor." First off, that's a fantasy. The energy budget for every person to have their own instance of GPT running for them is absurd. Microsoft couldn't afford it. Google couldn't afford it. Nobody could. Not just training, even just running it, but personalized for every person. But in the spirit of some good science fiction, I recommend the book The Diamond Age by Neil Stephenson. It greatly inspired me to enter the field. And it's a book about an AI built specifically to maximize the outcomes of a young, wealthy young girl. But copies of it end up in the hands of a middle-class kid and another kid living on the street. And then the story explores what happens when this AI, works so hard to change who they are as people. And it turns out it's incredibly hard. And as I alluded to during the talk, the most likely outcome for most kids is actually negative, that the AI would do more harm than good. And that's a perfect example of an unintended consequence. It surely must sound like a terrific idea to give every kid their own AI tutor. And if we could truly build high performance AI tutors that give students what they need and not what they want, I would be an advocate for it. But we haven't built that yet. And to have the most famous person advocating AI ubiquity in the world saying that this is our goal, that really worries me. But let me take it even further. It worries me, yes, in my own work. So when I start a new project, I don't start with the data set. I don't start with algorithms. I start by going out and observing the problem myself, literally with my own eyes. When we worked on a project with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, the goal was to build an AI that could actually nudge the wishes. A kid wants to go to Disneyland. Our nudge says, that's terrific. We'll pay for it all, and we'll pay for you to bring 3 of your best friends. Because it turned out, our analysis showed that for some kinds of kids, making a wish more social actually literally increased their survival rates. And for some kids, making it more narrative increased their survival rates and decreased divorce rates within the families. And before you've ever rung that doorbell, how would you know enough about that family to be able to make such a nuanced recommendation? Because you don't get to change the wish. You only get to shift it a tiny bit. And that project started with me going out and watching what they call wish granters, watching their staff ring the doorbells and meet the families for the first time and figure out, is there anything we can do here to make a difference? Because the biggest challenge actually in bringing new technologies into the world, whether it's AI or not, is actually understanding human beings, understanding how we make choices. Almost every project I work on, and I run a philanthropic lab, people bring me challenging problems. Dr. Ming, my daughter has 500 seizures a day. Dr. Ming, our country has bias in its promotion process. Help us build an economic model to actually price that bias so we can measure our changes. Dr. Ming, our country does everything the World Bank tells us to improve our education system, and still no one's hiring our citizens. Please help. And if I think my team and I can make a meaningful difference, I pay for everything. Whatever we invent, we give away. And so I get to work on a fabulously diverse set of problems. The only thing that binds them together is that they're about people. And in almost all of them, the reason they have been challenging for so long isn't some technology problem. It isn't because we didn't know something about how 2 chemicals were interacting. It is because we misunderstood how human beings were making decisions. And usually I use AI, as I've already said, to try and understand those humans. Our solutions, as often as not, don't actually have AI built into them. We just used it as a tool to understand the very human story of what was going on. So here's what I truly believe is the greatest idea in all of human history. And you've all heard it before. It's the philosophy of science. But it's not the specifics of science. I don't care about the facts. I don't care about the methodology that universities have developed over the decades and centuries. What I care about is this simple, powerful truth. The world is understandable in a way that we can share with one another. But the only way you can truly have confidence in that understanding is to be skeptical of yourself. If you want to solve real problems in the real world, using technology or not, be skeptical of yourself first, because you are the greatest source of threat to actually making a meaningful difference in that problem space.
Wow. I asked one question, but you actually answered the question I wanted to ask, which was, what's the value of being human in a technocentric world? So thank you. I think that's a wonderful way to end this. I wish we could have more questions, but I really, really recommend that you follow Dr. Ming on LinkedIn. And she and Sokos Labs releases the dates and times when she would be answering questions. And I've been through several of them. 2 a.m. for the Philippines and Singapore, but yes, they're worth going to. And thank you. Yes?
By the way, if we got enough takers, I would happily be the one to wake up at 2 a.m. and do it your time. Or better yet, if we got enough takers, I would love to come back to Singapore, and I have never been to Manila. It would be an absolute pleasure. For me, for you, you'd have to see this actually up close and personal, which I could only apologize for. And the smell is even worse. But if you'll have me, please, I would love to come for a visit.
Yes, and I think that's a fantastic segue to Yang Wai, you first. I think you're going to sign off from Singapore.
That's right. Thank you so much, Dr. Ming. I think there's as always, you just give us so many nuggets of really insight and wisdom. And I think, especially thinking about how technology is just a tool. And I think if our focus is on the human, I think there's so much more that we should be doing rather than allowing it to, just complete all the routine work and, make us dumb people. But there's so much potential in the human and how we should be building that up instead. So thank you so much for those things. I think in Singapore, we're going to log off. And I think that's going to happen as well in the Philippines. That's right, PG?
Yes, after a photo op. After a photo op, Yang Wai. I think we...
Oh, that's right. Yes, a photo op.
So not the best photo op given the circumstances, but still an opportunity to take a photo. Yes, Yang Wai, are you taking one?
We have no idea how to do this.
I'm sure someone with a phone can do it.
I think I need some Photoshop skills in here right now.
All right. So it's nice that we're seeing the campus. That's where the Hyper Island magic happens. And I think a few minutes ago, we were showing Ayala Museum. If we could just show how big the crowd is. We have, I think, 150 or so people here, Dr. Ming. So on behalf of the people here in the Philippines and Singapore, we'd like to thank you, and we look forward to seeing you face to face in Asia next year. Yeah, let's make that happen.
We will absolutely make that happen.
Yes,
all right.
Let's make that happen indeed. Thank you so much.
So thank you, and have a good evening.
Cheers.
Okay, so we're signing off, and thank you.
So are we here from Singapore?
Yes, so that
yes,
ends.
bye-bye.
Okay, so yeah, that ends part 1 of this morning's event, and part 2 we will break out into our localized discussions, and we're going to have a discussion in Singapore, here, in the Philippines, and I think we're also having discussions in Vietnam, and I think in different venues around the world we're hosting their watch parties who are watching the live stream live from YouTube. Yang, why are you still there? Okay, I think Singapore's already disconnected. So yeah, thank you for staying and watching that very enlightening discussion and talk by Dr. Vivienne Ming. Okay, so yeah, so for part two, we're going to have, as we mentioned, we're going to have a panel discussion. And before I introduce the panel, if at in any point of the discussion you thought of a burning question, please park it in the question parking lot in the QR code that we will be showing. So we'll show a QR code there. Please scan the QR code or go to bit.ly/askhyper, and you can park your questions for our panelists this morning. Okay, so and then we will respond to your questions after this event. Now, let me call back to the stage our panel moderator, Ms. Peachy, okay, to guide and to moderate our panel discussion this morning, right? Okay, so our first panelist is the President and CEO of IBPAP, the primary trade body and advocacy group of the IT BPM sector in the Philippines. He is responsible for ensuring that the country retains its renown as a global leader for the IT BPM services. He and his team launched the Philippine IT BPM Industry Roadmap 2028, the sector's blueprint for creating 1.1 million new jobs, becoming a $59 billion industry with 2.5 million employees and contributing to 8.9% to the country's GDP. Our first panelist, Mr. Jack Madrid. Okay, our next panelist is a highly accomplished and seasoned creative professional with a wealth of experience in the advertising industry. She has held prestigious positions, including serving as the Creative Guild President at 4A's Philippines and as the Executive Creative Director at Havas Ortega. Prior to these roles, she excelled as the Creative Director at both Ace Saatchi & Saatchi and Ogilvy Philippines, showcasing her innovative leadership and creative prowess. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Angie Tijam Tohid. Our third panelist is currently the Chief Data Privacy Officer of the PLDT Group. She has over 25 years of experience in digital, data, social, CRM, CVM, focusing on strategy, analytics and data management, media, product, and strategy, and in consulting for industries covering FMCG, technology, telecommunications, and healthcare. Let's all welcome Ms. Leah Besa Jimenez. And our fourth panelist is the Chief Operating Officer of Dito CME and the Chief Innovation Officer of the Udena Corporation. Prior to his current role, he has served in various leadership capacities in the media, advertising, and digital spaces, having been the country CEO of Dentsu Aegis Philippines, Chief Digital Officer of ABS-CBN Corporation, Managing Director of MRM Manila, and CEO of Yehey Corporation and Media Contacts Manila. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Donald Lim. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll now turn over the stage to our moderator, Peachy Paking.
Thank you, TQ. And thank you, everyone, to every single one of the panelists who have said yes to me. And I know, as someone was saying, how could you have gotten Ayala Museum during December when it's Christmas time? I said, you use every single card you have. Yeah, your godmother card, your former boss card. But thank you to April if she's here. She made this event happen for us. So thank you. And I'm sure there's so many other people to thank. But let's get talking. At ha- there were people who said, why are you making your lives difficult? Why don't you just live stream, right? And let people a lot more people watch. And then we go with, oh, that's not how we do it at Hyper Island. Because we believe that we don't learn from an experience, but we learn from reflecting on an experience. So this is, in a way, a very structured reflection, and also adding to the knowledge that was shared earlier today. So thank you again for the panelists for allowing us to do this, to reflect. So I guess my first question before I look at my notes is, first thoughts? If you had first thoughts about what Dr. Ming has shared this morning, what exactly stuck out for you or resonated with you. So I'll give you a few seconds to think about it, but what are your first reactions? And anyone can take the question.
I think at PLDT and personally, we actually the way we view AI is similar to how she views it, that it's a tool, right? But it requires us to govern it properly, and the rights that it potentially could infringe on, given the amount of data that it accesses, is what we are very critical about, right? So we treat it as a tool, and we govern it, but that requires a lot of scrutiny. We are very critical about the path, the interaction that it has with our customers. So we actually implemented AI for customer service already from a collection standpoint. And we've experienced, she said 40%. So the last 6 months, we've experienced at least a 33% increase in productivity, increase as well in terms of collection. But the amount of review that it took at least 6 months as well, right? Because we were more critical, because it was accessing amounts of data, it was interacting with the customer. So we needed to go down to the level of the actual call path, right? Really determining if the customer says this, what would be the response? So down to that, right? Normally, we don't go as deep from a call script standpoint when it comes to technology. But because it uses data and it is interacting with the customer, we need to. Because we need to ensure that we are not creating biases with how we respond or how the machine assesses the interaction or the response of the customer. We are not creating potential discrimination. Yes. Right? We're very critical about those areas. Again, it is just a tool, but a tool that you need to be critical about and vigilant. Right? So I remember one of the questions that we had in the assessment was, okay, so you've determined this path of questions that potentially the customer normally has. What about those that you haven't defined? What do we do then? Right? So I think the decision was for already have, when it's undefined, then have a human already come in. Switch over to an actual live customer service rep to be able to handle the call, right? Because if it's undefined, then it becomes difficult. So again, it is a tool, and it's a tool that you need to be critical about given the amount of data that you have, that you need to actually, that the system that the tool needs to ingest.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you. Yes, Angie, are you going next?
Yes.
Yes.
So first, good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to be part of this very provocative conversation. I think for me, it was very reassuring to listen to Dr. Ming because I remember it was last year when I was asked a very difficult question, which was, what is the creative department of the future? And I remember going to Peachy to ask her this question, the same question, because I don't know. I'm scared. I don't know how to answer this. I don't know how to approach this. And I think it was also through the help of Peachy that I got into Hyper Island, and we had to go through the process of finding out for ourselves some of the answers to questions that are asked. And I think for me, it's still a journey. I don't know, I still don't know what the answer is. But going back to what Dr. Ming shared earlier, it validates us as I was trying to figure out really how to help my team, how to help perhaps the industry in my new role as Creative Guild President. Of course, my boss is in the Creative Guild, is right here, David Guerrero. I think it's wonderful to hear that it's really about being a better person. Because as I was trying to articulate what the potential answer could be, it's really helping my team become better humans. Because to create meaningful stories, meaningful campaigns, it's really a product of the people who create them. So therefore, that's why there are some agencies, companies that shine more than others. It's really because of the people that create these meaningful stories. And of course, in my agency, we believe in that, creating meaningful difference to people, to brands. And I think that's my first step, that's my guide for now in approaching the age of AI and all the scary things that come with it. Of course, there are certain investments and strategic partnerships that are being done in order for us to actually start to move forward and play with it and use it to facilitate production, content creation, etc. But as Leah also mentioned, it's really a tool. It's a partner right now.
Thank you, Angie. So who would like to give their first thoughts?
Okay. I'll just add on to what both Leah and Angie mentioned. No? Very fascinating was the mention of the craftsman and the tool. So TQ and Director Mark were both in Enderan. So the three of us are in Enderan. So we handle multimedia arts. So we launched our multimedia arts last year, no? And we have a lot of students. But what was very interesting was that because AI was really up there already, what we saw under the multimedia, under the College of Arts and Design is interior design, architecture, and multimedia arts. The problem is the very finals, what we would have taught in one semester, they could finish it in 6 minutes in the start of the sem because of Midjourney, because of Jasper, because of all of these AI tools. And that shifts all the challenges and apprehensions of all of us being in the, wearing our teacher hat. What do you teach students when their final exam, they're done at the start of the sem? Right? Because in one click, the interior design is done. They want an architectural design, it's done. Right? In one click. So how would we know if it is really something that they've done or not? Right? And that begs the question that if we are the craftsman teacher and we have all of these apprentices, if the apprentices knows and understands the tools better than the teacher. And that is why for all of us, we began a deep reflection that we have to also deep dive. We cannot be scared of this tool. Whether you are a professor or you are in the field, in advertising and everywhere, we have to understand these tools ourselves. Now, of course, now there's a fight back. No, there are now AI trackers, like plagiarism checkers. Now there are now AI checkers also, right? But goes without saying that we also have to understand. Now in one look we know that's AI, right? In one look, no, you know that you didn't do that, right? But just the same, also from a brand perspective, you know also that a creative would have done that purely AI, or was there a human input there, right? So I think the fight has just begun between what we call the man and the machine, right? I think we always say machine 1 point, human 0, but I really believe what Dr. Vivienne is saying, right? That eventually the humans will now understand all of this, and we will be able to better what is still just a tool.
Yes. Thank you. You said that some of the professors might be fearful and all that, and one of the things that Dr. Ming said was courage. That's one of the things we need to move forward, is to develop courage. It's not something you're born with, it's something that you can actually develop. So that's great to hear. That's great to hear how because I told DQ, we were both in multimedia in another university, and I said, if the multimedia continues the way it does, as I know it, I said that's the first industry that's going to go away, right? Well, including AI encroaching on creation. But more on that later. But thank you for your first thoughts, Jack. What struck you?
What struck me from listening to Dr. Ming was really her phrase about the well-posed questions. And when I heard that phrase, it really hit me. What hit me most was really the power of the AI and generative AI and large language model, its transformation, but also its limitations. Because I think as Leah, described it, it's a tool. In fact, it's a disruptive and powerful tool, but it also doesn't have the judgment-sensitive or creative prowess of a human. But the other thing that struck me about the well-posed question was it reminded me of the 1.7 million workforce of the IT BPM industry, because they are probably the world's experts in listening to the queries, problems, and questions of the global customers that they serve. We are a world capital in delivering customer experience to the world. And I think this represents the opportunity part of what generative AI can provide our industry. Of course, there are also challenges. The monotonous tasks will be replaced, and should be. After all, the industry has long vied for value-added services, KPO. We have always wanted that. So perhaps we can leverage on the potential of AI to finally make that happen.
Yes, for sure. I think this panel is a representation of techno optimists. So we see the opportunities, and we're excited about the opportunities that technology can bring, particularly AI can bring to the Philippines, but we're also very pragmatic, right? So, and at least the way I know each of you. So I'll go into very specific questions now, which I wrote for each of you, and I'll start with you, Jack. I'll start with you and your industry, because I have a fascination for the IT BPM industry, because I've studied your industry since 2016 as a student. You were the subject of my masteral thesis. And I think there's Doc in the room. Thank you very much for helping me then when introducing me to the Analytics Association of the Philippines, which is now a member of your organization. And the reason I decided to study your industry was because there was a lot of talk about inclusive growth back in 2016. Inclusive growth, whether it's on a local level, on a regional level. I think APEC meetings were about inclusive growth. But when I look around, I saw that the one industry that truly actioned and contributed to inclusive growth, really lifting people up from, I think the term back then was the laylayan of society. I went to your events, I went to the industry events, and this might not be fair, but I'd like to get your foresight as opposed to looking back. But so I saw your industry as truly delivering on inclusive growth as opposed to just paying lip service. The recommendation back in 2017, and I know this is before your time, was to transition the industry workforce from mid to low skilled work to knowledge work. Now, there is literature that reveals AI is threatening the knowledge industry because now it can answer any question, right? So in fact, they say it's going to replace Google. So it's threatening the knowledge industry, let alone the knowledge workers. If you could just share some high-level strategies your industry is considering to mitigate these threats.
Now, you have to think of our industry as no longer one-dimensional and just delivering simple customer queries. It's matured and diversified well beyond that. In fact, you could almost say that IT BPM or BPO is everything. And what I mean by that is that the nature of the tasks and the functions that we perform in delivering customer experience span across very different and distinct verticals, whether it's banking and financial services or healthcare, which include caring for patients globally, and of course, hospitality the sector, and even the creative industries. We have a very active game development and animation sector as well. So there is no one size fits all, and I think when you view the industry in that way, you can already see how diverse and inclusive we have been, and no longer is our industry limited to Manila or Cebu, but we actually span across all the emerging cities and provinces. So we were inclusive before it became a cool thing to be. And so, but to answer your question, I think never before has it been more urgent to take the responsibility of lifelong learning more urgently and seriously than now. We will work with the government and continue. We have been trying to address the educational gaps that exist. And this is not just for our industry, but for all of us here. But we can't rely on them because I really think that the learning journey needs to be, we need to take our own personal responsibility for our need to upskill and reskill. And in the future of work that we now live in, I think the acceleration of having to learn new skills and unlearn and relearn has never been as fast as it needs to be. So it's almost irrelevant what you studied in college. And not everyone wants to go to college, by the way. So we need to really, what IBPAP and my team have been working on is really trying to plug the skills gaps. I liken it to finishing school. integrating short vocational domain knowledge courses into the existing workforce and into our incoming generation of job seekers to make that path from education to employment more direct. Because my metric is job generation. I have 1.1 million jobs to help generate by 2028. So that's really our focus, and there are many specific interventions that we do.
And that's wonderful to hear. I think this is a far longer conversation to have. But I guess the reason why we're doing this is because we see, at Hyper Island, we see that a lot of people and a lot of companies are really investing in reskilling and upskilling, but AI sort of changes the dimensions of what people should be reskilled, upskilled in, right? So first we thought it was, and not necessarily just to your industry, but first we thought it was about hard skills. Everybody should go into STEM. Everybody should learn how to code. Everybody should know how to do this. And then here comes AI and appends all of these skills and say, well, I can actually create a website without learning how to code. So this is also related to my comment on if this is all multimedia teaches, then I'm so sorry. I don't think this is going to last very long. But to make people aware that perhaps the monkey wrench, which is AI, you can think of it as a monkey wrench, and this changes everything. And all bets are off, as I said earlier to someone, all bets are off. And it's really about how are we preparing ourselves, right? And that's why we're provoking this conversation, because at the very heart of it is we hope you walk away saying there's so much to be done, and it has to be done tomorrow, right? So related to, Angie, this is a question for you, and it's a related question. Your presence represents the marketing communications industry, and we know that that agencies like your agency and other agencies, the currency is ideas, right? Stories, meaningful stories, as you said, but stories that start with an idea. And I think I have a slide I'd like to show. Because as AI, there are two people who predicted, two entities that predicted this progression of AI. Ray Kurzweil, he used to be a Google engineer, and he has a very, very high batting average in terms of his predictions coming true. I think it's about 86, 87%. And then this was validated by Gartner. So if you look at the Gartner literature that's being produced, one section in their literature says AI will go through 3 stages. And we are in the present stage of AI being a partner, an assistant, a tool, right? But as it learns, as there is more computing power that allows in larger data sets, then it moves to becoming a creator. A creator where they can create scenarios beyond human capability. They can, in the application of health, you could imagine all possible diagnoses because there's such a huge body of data already available. Well, not publicly available, but you can, as Dr. Ming has studied the propensity of postpartum depression, how she hacks her son's diabetes. So then it becomes a creator, where it puts 2 and 2 together and presents a solution. But perhaps further down, and I don't think anyone's talking about the unholy marriage of AI and quantum computing, but I'll put it out there. Right now, AI is just limited by what's accessible to it. The data sets, the computing power. But quantum computing will allow it to create far more scenarios at a quicker faster, perhaps with more precision. And when AI becomes an actor, and now humans augment AI capabilities, the way Ray Kurzweil said this was, AI technology and AI used to be beneath us as human beings. Then we work alongside it, and eventually it will tell us what to do. So I don't want anyone to walk away saying Peachy is making me depressed because one day they are AI overlords. But it's good to know, right? We teach us strategize like a futurist class diaper island, and we say look forward. Don't just look behind. Look forward. Where is this headed? So Angie, after that very, very long preamble, as AI moves from partner and assistant to creator, creating scenarios beyond human capability, how differently or similarly will your industry, and it could be a hypothetical answer, Angie, I know, will your industry define and develop creative talent? So how do you define creative talent, and how would you develop creative talent? And you can pass the question to David just in case you say, pass the question. Yeah, but anyone who'd like to answer, anyone who's in the creative industry can. But I'd like to address the question to Angie for now.
Yes, it is a very difficult question, but I think as well as we're trying to figure this out, right? First, the scenarios, like from partner to creator to actor. I think the way that I see it is very scary and intimidating and all that. But I think at this point in time, we're still at the partner stage. And that's where we are exploring. And we're trying to learn it and figure it out along the way. And as Jack mentioned earlier, it's really us being open to learning. And that's the kind of culture we're trying to build within, let's say, our agency and even the whole industry. It's a culture of learning and being open to unlearning things that we know from the past, right? But at the same time, I think as a total industry, at least the way I see it, this book by Mustafa Sulaiman, wherein he talks about the next wave, which is the scenario of the actor, the creator and actor. I think it's still, the role of policy, because he talked about containment. How do we control it that it doesn't get to the level where it controls us, takes over our jobs, takes over the things that we offer as humans, right? So now that we're still, I think we're still at that partner stage, hand in hand with policies and all that. I think there we can protect ourselves, protect the kind of stories we create, powered by empathy, powered by intuition, imagination, and I think that's what we can bring to the table as an industry, as creatives, and I think that's where we also go back to the learning culture wherein we encourage curiosity, we encourage people to just try to figure things out as they go along, but it's still powered by what makes us human. And I think it goes back to what Dr. Ming was saying earlier. We talk to humans, so it's a human to human connection, right?
Yes.
And I think that's what I'm still latching on to at this point in time. I don't know what the answer is, really, like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and how do we prepare for that? As I mentioned earlier, it's still in the process of trying to figure that out. And I think as an entire industry, I also mentioned earlier that there are investments being made, strategic partnerships being made in order to arm the industry, how to deal with AI, how to work with AI. But I think the best scenario for me is really a hybrid wherein humans work with AI, utilize AI the way it should be. And then, of course, the policies that will help support the ethical part of it.
You know I love you very much, right? But I love your answer even better.
Oh, thank you.
Even more. Because no, because what I heard was her taking Vivienne Ming's words and saying, what do we model? What do we model to other people? And she just, what I heard from Angie was, I don't know all the answers, but we're going to figure it out. And I think that's how we are going to thrive. If we are humble enough, vulnerable enough to say, I only know so much. Some of it might not be relevant anymore, but we're going to figure it out. We're going to explore. So I am very heartened by your response, because what it indicates to me is you are willing to go out there and figure this thing out. We may not have all the answers right now, but you are invested. And that reassures me. Coming from an industry I also love. So I am reassured. So thank you, Angie. Leah, since we were talking about agencies and we talk about marketing, and oh, by the way, we are represented by a host of other sectors, associations, and enterprises. I don't know if we have anyone from the armed forces, but I know someone said they were coming. And but I'm going back to the marketing industry and possibly other industries that use data the same way as marketing does. One of the opportunities, not just for agencies but businesses at large, would be the ability to use large data sets to craft hyper-personalized offerings and conversations with individual customers. Our current data privacy policies are stringent, and thank you very much for your work on that, and yet fair. But seeing what is looming ahead, should these policies evolve when we have unknowingly given up a lot of personal data through our online behaviors, and certain actors no longer need our express permission? So how do you see it evolving, these policies?
Well, in terms of policy, I think it's a general norm that technology will be faster than policy, unfortunately, right? But that being said, doesn't mean that there are not any moves, around the world in terms of putting policy in place, particularly in the aspect of, UNESCO actually put out its stand in terms of ethical use of AI already. And that goes to show you that AI, because of the potential biases and discrimination it can apply, can actually lead to division, right? And potential threatening your human rights. That's why even they are getting involved, right? Because it's the human condition that you're actually already affecting. But that being said, while policy is being crafted, the Philippines as well is also moving into creating some policy. You have the data privacy rights, right? That's available in the Philippines and all other markets. That is actually a very good basis to doing any policy, right? Any assessment for AI. That's what we use. The EU actually is releasing its policy soon, and it actually recommends doing what their version of, they call it fundamental rights impact assessment. For privacy, it's privacy impact assessment. So it just goes deeper into, again, the human condition, right? You look at things like potential intrusion into the lives of people, potential surveillance, right? And these are the things that, again, while you have policy, you have government potentially putting that out there, I think it's incumbent on us as the users, a company, and even the consumer. First, the company that will actually apply the tool to govern ourselves properly. We always say, whenever we come across a project that we are being asked to assess, we always ask the question, what is fair and what is right? We ask the question in terms of, if it were me being assessed, how would I want to be treated, right? Is it fair that we are profiling a customer this way? That's why we had to go, in the project that I mentioned earlier, we had to go deep into the actual call path, because in the call path, we will determine biases. So we actually have to go deeper in terms of projects now that involve AI more than regular projects, because of the ability to actually engage with the customers and the computing time, right, that it requires for the tool to actually deliver something. We need to be able to know the actual path it takes so that we can determine, is it the right path? Are we discriminating against the customer, right? Again, versus the purpose why we are applying this tool to begin with, right? So that's how we do it. So it's self-governance, I think. You will have policy. Policy is going to be there. Again, it will catch up. And it is catching up already, right? But we apply the same rules in terms of, because of privacy, and we are aware of the policies as well internationally that's happening.
I am very excited about how you see this playing out, because I think it's Maria Ressa who said, the way to solve the world's problems, or at least most of the problems, is the short term is civic action. So when you say we have to self-govern, the short-term solution to most problems is, what are we going to do about it? How do we exercise agency? And if you notice the pattern of the questions, it's really about, what is your industry doing? In your capacity as a person and as a professional, what are you doing? So civic action, then policy and regulation, and then education is the long-term solution. Yes. So I am very, very encouraged by your answer.
So part of, from a privacy standpoint, we actually, it's fundamental that you can actually exercise your rights to see what type of data is being accessed and processed, right? And have anything amended, if ever. And that's why it's important, again, so from a customer standpoint, from an individual standpoint, those are rights that are afforded to us already. But you need to be able to exercise those rights. And a company needs to make sure that any solution that we provide, that we apply, or that we use, for example, for AI, there is traceability. We are able to trace and accountability and auditability, so that we are able to really see where the potential misstep happens. We never say it will never happen, because we don't know. But we do put guardrails in to ensure that we can trace it back and make the proper correction, if ever.
That's really good. Yeah, accountability, traceability. I learn so much from every conversation I have with Leah, and then I'm a little smarter for that conversation. Donald, you've heard Leah talk about what her company is putting in place to mitigate certain unintended consequences. I know you wear multiple hats. You spoke as an educator earlier, but I'd like to hear from you in your role as COO and CIO of a conglomerate, because let's talk about the business view. And I already apologize for the question, because it's quite a big question. But you will be leveraging, as running businesses, you will be leveraging incredible the incredible value of personal data. So maybe you can give a comment on Leah's response. But the big question that I wanted to ask you was, and where is that? It disappeared. What is businesses' moral obligation to protecting when moral obligation when you decide, and that's not when you decide, when you integrate AI in business? What is the moral obligation?
You know, we didn't care. AI has been there for the longest time. We didn't care about AI until ChatGPT came. And then biglang everyone wants to be AI expert. No, same with Facebook, right? No one cared when it was Friendster or whoever, right? But I always want to tell, I advise people this reminder because sometimes, so we're as part of the Udena group, Phoenix, you have Conti's, Wendy's, you have Enderan, you have Clark Global. So many companies, they come, AI. I said, you have to go back to work. What do you want to do with AI? Right? Go back to work, right? I said, if you really want to leverage AI, there are so many tools for many suppliers, but focus on the core business. Focus on running your team, your people, right? I always say, right, I don't know if some of you, because so many young people, I don't know if many of you experienced WordStar. WordStar and Lotus 123. Right? So, in the realm of AI, moving to AI, we are just in WordStar. We haven't even moved to Microsoft Word. So, someday, somehow, maybe in 2026, 2030, maybe we'll be more sophisticated, but if you do not understand still ChatGPT, haven't tried it, that's okay. Do not force, how can I use ChatGPT for my business? I said, don't. Focus on your business. Focus on operations. AI, later on, we understand one thing. You will be able to do things faster. You will be able to make your business bigger. So speed and scale is very integral for any business. Speed and scale. AI will help you. But to get there, right, you need to get the fundamentals correct. Without the fundamentals correct, no AI will push your business to. So you have to start from a level of what I call basic excellence or perfection, right? If you cannot have if you're running a restaurant and you're not managing your operations well, or you're not treating your customers right, you cannot expect AI to solve. So the basic has to be there. So that's why I still say there's no such thing as what will AI help solve. AI is an amplifier, it augments, but it will not solve your problem. So from having that perspective, what I always say when you go back, even for the creative sector, even for any segment, do the basics, the core, make it what we call the brilliant basics, right? Make it brilliant. And then AI will bring it to the next level. But if you keep on focusing on what AI will do, then you will lose focus on what you should be doing, right? Which is the core expertise of every human.
I love that. Make it brilliant. Because what I do know, reading literature, is what AI threatens is the mediocre. So your encouragement of people to say, make whatever you do brilliant, secures them. So thank you for that.
Can I just add to the
please.
Fundamental that Donald was saying? So from an actual implementation standpoint, one of the fundamental issues that we have, and I'm sure any company will have, is the accuracy of your data. Right? So remember, garbage in, garbage out. Right? So the biases are actually created because the data is potentially inaccurate or outdated. So the task for the excellence that Donald is talking about is making sure that data is accurate. Because if it's not, then it will not give you the results that you need. So the project that I mentioned, we actually had to ensure the sets that they were using, right, were accurate and very little issues. Because again, garbage in, garbage out. You cannot expect a tool to solve their problems when the problems are there, exist already, right, which you're not fixing. It's not going to fix the problem, right? It's going to amplify it further. It's going to actually open up more problems. right? So you need to fix the fundamentals.
Yes. It reminds me of basic photography. When Photoshop became all the rage, we'll fix it in Photoshop. We'll fix it in Photoshop. Well, I don't think it's the same case with data. You can't fix it in Photoshop. You really have to start with really good material. I'm mindful of the time and we're 5 minutes over, but I'd really like to wrap this up with what we call a checkout. Yeah, at Hyper Island, we check in and we check out. So the checkout question that I'd like to ask the panel, in your current role, as well as a human being, what is your wildest dream for Filipinos in the age of AI? What is your wildest dream for Filipinos in the age of AI?
I can take that on. It's not a very wild dream, but it is certainly aspirational. I've always viewed our industry as one solid pathway for most of our population to enter the middle class, and that is what that is what the job generation potential of the industry has made possible. So I think if we take the responsibility of our lifelong learning urgently, I think we are there because we are one of the few industries that actually works for our country. And I think, we don't really need to sell the Philippines, but we need to ensure that the talent supply gap that exists is as full as it can. And I think AI provides us that possibility. It can actually democratize and be the leveler of the playing field because it is relatively early days, as Donald said. But we need to move fast.
Yes. Thank you, Jack.
As a creative, we try to solve more than marketing problems, right? We try to solve human problems. So as a creative Filipino and a human being, my wish is that AI will help create a better traffic system for us. And that's it.
Okay. As I said, pragmatic. We're also very, very pragmatic. Thank you, Angie.
Mine is actually a very personal one. I was actually quite interested in that she was working on the Alzheimer's project for AI. If you've actually watched this show in Amazon Prime called Upload, where you can actually upload your before you actually pass, you can upload your consciousness, right? And your family can actually interact with you. I think that's great potential, even for the living, right? Especially as you age and you're losing a couple of your, things that you forgot already. Imagine being able to interact with a double so that it can just augment certain things. I think that's, for me, a very powerful tool. Of course, I need to consent to it, right? I need to upload the data, and what the data, I need to upload all of the, the data that I have or how I process things needs to be updated as well to the tool. But I find that a very fascinating prospect, and it's going to help so many people. And I'm sure at some point in my life I will also need it. Again, it's a very personal one.
Thank you, Leah. You have to be reassured that Kurzweil also predicted immortality. Now, whether it's in computer or in biology, he predicted immortality. And our final guest.
I always believe that because of AI, it can really catapult the Philippines to really into the global stage. I've always believed that we are creators, right? And if you think about it, if in a story of man versus machine, the machine can never win because a creation cannot beat the creator. That is the very essence of it, right? So the same way that in man versus machine, we will always win because we are closer to our creator, whether you're religious or not, creator to God or whoever that is. So in that sense, right, in that sense, it is now up to us how we leverage this new power that is in front of all of us. If humans decide to be more human, then we can win. If we decide to be more machine, we will lose. And in many cases, that's also the challenge I was talking to Jack earlier. Na in the BPO setting, if you're doing more mechanical tasks that is more robotic, then you lose, right? Because you will be overtaken by machine. The BPO has to move to a higher level of being, of knowledge, of understanding. And what I really like about what Dr. Vivienne said, no, lived experience. A machine cannot have a lived experience. That's automatic 1 point for you, right? So imagine that if we cultivate all of that, right? If we harness all of that, all the creatives, all the great minds in every sector in the Philippines, we are natural creators. Yet sometimes, because maybe, I don't know, I blame it on the Spanish, maybe, yung more 300 years, mas tamad, mas siesta, and all of that. But if we go to our deep roots and we are real creators, and we master AI in our respective fields, whether it is on the side of medicine, on business, on advertising, ever, we can really become global leaders in everything that we do. So I think AI should be adopted in every segment, that we have to understand and be the first. I'm scared of the Indians, actually, because they're very fast. They're there. I talk to Chinese. They're also very, very aggressive, right? So where are we, right? So I think also from a educational standpoint, even from a business perspective, we have to execute, implement, and create all of these lived AI experience with our teams already. If you don't understand, go and jump into it. I cannot teach you, but go, and I will try to be there with you. But we have to start harnessing and understanding all of these tools, even if we don't understand, right? Because it's going to be a race. They don't understand it also. If you think about it, you think they're good. No, they're not. Everyone's in the same space and the same level. We just have to start doing it now.
And if I were to synthesize the checkouts, a few keywords would surface, and you were talking about the same things. It's about how we become better people. That's what will secure us. And as Dr. Ming said, it's really becoming better people, and that will secure us. And better people through meta learning and meta skills that are far more transcendent than hard skills. So I don't know about you, but I'm ending and I'm leaving this conversation very, very hopeful, because I think the captains of industry that you have in front of you understand what it takes to thrive in the age of AI. So thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. And let's do this again. It's been fun. It's been fun. Yes, so let's have more conversations. So thank you, everyone. So please give our panels a big round of applause. Yes. And I do believe when you walk off stage, we have a little, I think a book and a token for you.
Hello.
Thank you very much. TQ?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Peachy, and our esteemed panelists. So as a token, we have a gift for each of you. And then please... Okay, here's the QR code for Augmented Humans 3-day advanced course happening this Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to message us or to send us an email. This is live via Zoom from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And so, thank you for joining Hyper Island this morning. Let's all see each other again very soon, and let's work together in building people for the unknown. Have a great day, and have a great weekend ahead.